Okay, next up I'm going to change the cam in the new old motor, the motor from the 84. So, everything off. This timing chain, which like I pointed out before isn't fantastic. You got to pull the lifters out first. Usually a needle nose will do it. Sometimes these get like a ridge on them and they're hard to get out. These seem okay. You just pull all these out or else they'll fall in the motor when you freaking pull the cam out. Okay, now you can just pull the cam out. Well, first you got to undo the 3 bolts to hold the timing sprocket on here. Sometimes there's a little sheet metal thing behind these bolts. Looks like a triangle, but it has little tabs that fold up around the bolts so they don't loosen up. So first you have to fold those tabs down before you can loosen the nuts. The bolts, this one doesn't have them obviously. Then you should be able to wiggle the cam gear off. There we go. Something of note, this has one of the infamous plastic timing gears, or nylon rather. The middle looks like it's aluminum or something, but the whole outside's nylon. Single roller timing chain. There's that. Now what you want to do is you want to find a bolt that'll thread into one of those 3 bolts, the bolt holes that you just pull the bolts out of. Use them as a handle to take the cam out. You don't need to go nuts threading the bolt in, just enough to get it started. It's not really holding any weight or anything. Now you have to pull the camshaft out. The camshaft rides on this large round part here. There's a couple of these down it, so you have to slowly pull the cam out and you'll feel it go through each one of the cam bearings. You don't want to drop the cam because you could nick one of the cam lobes off the cam bearings and then wreck the cam bearings, or wreck your camshaft if you're putting it back in. It's a little tricky until you get a bit of it out, so you got to have the handle. That gear right there drives the distributor, and it's the thing you have to be like the most careful not to nick the cam bearings with. Here is the new cam. It's a generic white box camshaft. It's a Summit Racing cam. I've used this a couple times before. Haven't had any problems with them. You really can't beat the price at all. This cam was $103 with lifters. Here's the specs. You can freeze that if you're that concerned. But it's 466 lift on both the intake and the exhaust, 298 duration, 114 degree lobe separation. Strange, I don't know, strange specs on it. Not much lift, decent amount of duration. So we'll see how it does. But here's how you go about installing this thing in there. So you want to install your bolt handle back in your cam. Your cam should have came with a mysterious pack of goo. This is a moly lubricant. It's for when the engine initially starts until oil gets onto the cam lobes. This goes onto your gear if you so please, but it's specifically onto each one of these cam lobes. You'll see all these are actually like not even really like machine polished yet. They'll polish when they sink into the lifters. You can't reuse flat tappet lifters on a new cam. It'll destroy everything. There's only one circumstance that you can actually reuse a flat tappet lifter, and that's if you put it back on the same cam on the exact same lobe it came off of. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Roller lifters you can do whatever you want with. New cam, old lifters, move the lifters around, doesn't really matter. Okay, so what else I have is some like Lucas assembly lube. Oh, here we go, again, product placement. Anyway, You can use like, I used to use a mixture of oil and like an STP additive, like a real thick oil additive that has zinc in it. But this stuff will work just as good. This goes on the cam journals that contact the bearings. So you want to put a decent smearing of this stuff on there. Once again, this is for when it initially starts until it gets oil pressure with all the bearings. And once you do that, you can start putting it in. And now it'll hold itself for a little bit. And here's where you get more messy. So here's the mysterious black goo. While you're holding it on the bearing there, and take some of this, put on your cam gear, so that'll wear in nice to the distributor gear. Okay, and then you want to put some on each lobe. And then it's all lubed up, we can stab this thing in and get messy some more. I said you can feel it when the journals hit each bearing, and you can guide it through. Okay, now before you can put the new timing chain and gears on, you got to pull this crank gear off. Could have done that earlier, doesn't really matter. But normally it comes off pretty easily, sometimes it even slides off. Yeah, not that one. So I just have a little jaw puller here. See how this works. Well, this one's not cooperating. Let's not touch that. Well, here's the new timing chain. You can see it has two sets of chains on basically it's called double roller. These come with different timing marks. You can either set it to the factory cam timing, or you can do 4 degrees advanced or 4 degrees retarded on the cam timing. I've never had any need to change it from anything but the factory, so that's how I'm going to put this on. So you put the crank part on first. Maybe it'll go on a little bit easier than it came off. Yeah, a little bit. Got to tap it on a little bit there. You can use like a socket or a piece of exhaust pipe, whatever, just to tap it on. Here we go. Now you're going to need your crank bolt that held the balancer and the your main pulley on. You need to thread that in there so you can spin the motor over. Now I'll show you when it's together, but on both the crank gear and the cam gear there is a round dot And in theory, not in theory, I have to. What you have to do is get those two dots where it's pointing up on the crank gear and down the cam gear directly onto each other. So you want to turn the crankshaft over until that dot is facing up. There you go, it's about up. Now you gotta put your cam gear on your cam, but don't bolt it on yet. There's an alignment bolt, or rod rather, that sticks out. And you want to turn your freshly installed camshaft until the gear lines up. Now that I have that to reference, I see the crank bolt has to go just like a little bit more. About like that. Now what you have to do is pull this back off, drape your chain over it, and now you have to get this thing on there and still have it line up. So there's where you go. I rotate it around just to make sure, and you'll see the two dots line up. That means your cam is timed properly. There you go, I Loctited and put the bolts in. Everything's all set as far as the actual cam and the block. Now we gotta put the lifters in. Here's one of the new lifters that came with the kit. There's 16 of them. This is a hydraulic lifter, hydraulic flat tappet. Flat tappet means there's no roller on the end. This flat piece rides up against the part of the cam that I put that gray goo on. Hydraulic means that inside of this is a spring and a piston, which you see right there. And somewhere, there we go, there's a little oil port in this channel. So when this is sitting in the block, remember they went in these holes, oil gets pressurized into this sleeve here, which goes into this port, which pushes this piston up. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to run zero valve lash, which is basically no gap between the push rod and the rocker arm and this lifter. And any slop in the valve train, or actually any compression, just gets absorbed by the little shock absorber in here, and it always maintains a perfect, you know, push rod to rocker attachment, I guess you could say, with no slop, no noise. Doesn't really need maintenance. The opposite of this would be a solid lifter, which they wouldn't have this piston, just be a solid piece of metal, and that you would have to periodically adjust, and you have to leave a slight gap, usually in the thousandths of an inch, when you adjust the rocker to push rod. If you have it tight, it'll actually bend the push rod or cause other valve damage when the valve opens. And you'll see I have my lifters in a can. Unfortunately, this was like one lifter short from sitting in there nice. What you do here, or at least what I do and some people do, is I soak these in oil. Some people soak them for like, I don't know, half an hour, hour. I just let them go overnight, because why not? There's kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of a controversial subject, because some people say you don't have to do this, it's a waste of time. I just do it because I've never had a problem with it before. Haven't wrecked any motors, haven't wrecked any cams. Done this every time, so I just kind of do it. The theory behind it is you have to fill these with oil, and eventually overnight it bleeds all the air out of the lifters. So then when you go to start the motor, the lifter is already fully swelled up with oil, and you won't have to like readjust your rockers after you run the motor and it gets oil pressure through it. And it also, you know, lubricates all the lifters when you put them in the block. So I filled it up with some just clean 1030. You just need to get it top the, you know, just past the top of the tallest lifter you have in your can or whatever you're putting it in. And if you sit here and watch this, I mean, it's kind of like watching paint dry or waiting for the toaster to pop. But you'll see little air bubbles come out of these things slowly, just as it bleeds all the air out and the oil fills the passages inside of it. So I'll leave this go for a night, and then tomorrow I'll put them in. Okay, next up, to go with the cam, I got a kit put out by Summit. It's their own brand of valve springs. Here be the springs. And it also comes with the, I'm knocking shit over here, the retainers, umbrella valve stem seals, and a bag of locks. All match the springs. These springs were, well, for everything. It all comes in one box. In case anyone's curious, because I actually couldn't find it on Summit's site, I had to Google it, and then it came right up under the part number. The part number is SUM 174001. Anyway, this whole kit was $60. All the springs, all the locks, all the retainers, all the seals, which was less than it still wasn't just buying like a name brand set of valve springs. And if I remember right, I don't remember the exact specs, but I think these valve springs were good up to like 495 lift. So I don't know if I really needed valve springs with the cam I'm using, but I just decided to be cautious and just for the price I'm order them. Then I'll take it apart later again. And you know, who knows, now that I'm reusing these 70s heads, these valve springs are, what, 1973? So who knows how good they are anyway. So I'm going to show you how to change them. It's a lot easier with them off the motor, obviously. I have this here tool. It's old school. This actually clamps around the head, as you'll see, and compresses the springs like a giant C-clamp. The ones that like screw on like a jaw puller, those suck. This thing's a lot easier. I already did some of the valve springs. You can see over here, if you can see this half with the new hotness and the old junk. But these are actually a real whore to do. I don't know why these stock valve springs are so stiff, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to start the outer one here because as it moves in farther in the head, it gets shadier and shadier hanging it off the workbench. So basically you just wrap this thing around the head. This cup here actually hits on the actual face of the valve, and then this little forky thing here goes on the top of the valve spring retainer. Oh, and it's adjustable there with the little C-clamp part. I'm going to press this now. Okay, you'll see it didn't really move. I was killing myself before until I realized that a few taps kind of loosens it up. Or just one. Because these things are a little stuck from being on there for that long. So there you go, now the locks are out. So you slowly open this thing so you don't launch the spring into the atmosphere. Not as bad as you think, actually. Off comes the old spring. The retainer stayed in the freaking tool for some reason. I'll get that in a second. Oh, there's one of the locks, the old box. There's a valve stem seal. It's probably hard to see, but it's a little O-ring on this, on the valve stem. Those are at the factory style. And as you know, well, some of you should know, small block Chevys are known to just blow oil past them. And instead of trying to pick it off, I just did this on the rest of them. I just tap the valve through, and then it pushes the O-ring off the top. Valve doesn't fall through because there's so much freaking varnish on it, it just stays in there. Then just wipe this stuff off, push the valve back up, wipe that stuff off. I don't remember, so I'm just going with it. There's a valve rotator on the bottom here. I think that's what it's called. It's a little washer with some grooves cut in it. It says this side up. There you go. Doesn't seem like it's hurting anything. I'm just going to leave it in there. Then you put your new umbrella valve seal on. You can see this thing actually like deflects the oil off the edges to just that little O-ring, so you get less oil down past the valve. But a little better. It'll still burn oil eventually. There's just no getting past it. Put new valve spring on. Put new retainer on. Then you get your death tool again. Let me just pop the old freaking retainer out of here. Believe it or not, the new springs are actually a lot easier to compress than the old ones. Don't know why, but whatever. There you go, so now it's holding it. You get your valve locks, and it might be hard to see where this camera is, but these things are in two halves. You get this right here. When you join them together, they make this little cone. You see they come apart? And they sit in the valve. There's actually a groove in top of the valve. So you put these in one half at a time. There's one in. You can kind of wiggle this tool to get the other side in. There we go. This is tricky because if you know how I'm sitting right, when you let this go, it's going to launch everything off, including those freaking valve locks, which will be fun. But those are in there. Slowly release, and it should just center those things right in the middle of the valve retainer. Voila, new valve spring on. Zoom in on this for you. There you go. And there's the other ones that I already did. So I'm just going to do this, well, I have 3 more on this head and then another 8 on the other one. And then I can put the heads back on the motor. I think that'll be about it for this video though. It's probably already getting pretty long. So in the next video I'll put the motor back together and we'll see what terrible things happen with this.